His logbook stopped mid-line when my headlights caught the sign, and for a second my brain refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. It was June 2019 on United States Highway 64, west of Boise City, Oklahoma, and the road ahead looked wrong in a way that had nothing to do with potholes or weather. Orange cones tightened the lane into a gravel turnout that wasn't listed on any detour notice, and a man stood out there at 2 a.m. waving a flashlight low, like he expected a 40-ton truck to obey the way a dog obeys a hand. I'd seen real inspections. Real ones had marked cruisers, overhead strobes, reflective aero boards, at least 2 people on scene, and the kind of radio chatter you can almost feel through the windshield. This had none of that. No unit, no second set of lights, no generator hum. Just a clean, official-looking portable sign and a man with a vest who knew exactly how to hold a flashlight, so it felt right.
As I eased off the throttle, I spotted the other rig already parked deeper in the turnout. Its cab doors were open. The trailer seal hung loose, sliced clean like someone had done it carefully, not in a panic. The driver was nowhere, and that alone was enough to make my pulse jump. Then I saw something else that made my stomach go tight. The white sedan from the last stop. It sat angled under the portable sign like it had pulled over fast, and the driver door was still open.
2 drivers had vanished on this stretch that month, and nobody had found their tractors. Folks said it was Mexico Cruise, or a cartel, or some homegrown outfit with bolt cutters and a taste for expensive freight. I didn't know what to believe. I just knew the sign was telling me to exit, and my instincts were telling me to keep moving. Let me walk you through what happened that night, because it didn't feel dramatic while it was unfolding. It felt procedural. It felt like a series of small decisions, each one made in a narrow window, with the consequences trailing behind like my trailer in the mirror. At the time, I was 38, behind on payments, and taking the late hauls because the late hauls paid a little better and didn't ask as many questions. My name is Heath, and I've been driving long enough to know that most trouble doesn't announce itself with a scream. Most trouble shows up with paperwork, confidence, and a tone that makes you doubt your own judgment. That night, I was pulling a sealed box trailer with medical freight headed toward Colorado. Not organs, not anything movie style. Temperature-stable cartons and totes, the kind of stuff that rides under a number on a bill of lading and becomes someone else's responsibility the moment you hit the receiver's dock. The shipper had a reputation for being strict, and my dispatch had been clear about one thing. Do not break the seal unless instructed, do not be late, and do not deviate unless there's an official detour. I left a warehouse east of Woodward a little after midnight. Dispatch had sent a message through the in-cab system about construction somewhere ahead, and a possible traffic control operation with a suggestion to follow posted signs. That last phrase should have bothered me more than it did, because it was vague in a way companies like to be when they don't want responsibility. At the time, I read it twice, shrugged, and rolled on, because detours cost time, and time costs money, and I was living too close to the edge to waste either. By about 1:40 a.m., the road had that empty Panhandle feeling that never changes, no matter what year you're in. The towns were spaced out and quiet. The lights thinned until the world was just my headlights, the reflective paint, and the occasional set of red taillights far ahead or far behind. Wind pushed at the trailer in small, steady taps, like someone flicking the side with a finger just to remind you it's there. I watched my mirrors the way drivers do when the rest of the world goes dark and you're the only moving thing for miles. You look for patterns. You look for headlights that sit in the same position too long. You look for the little flick of someone changing lanes behind you when there's no reason to. Most nights, there's nothing. That night, at the time, I thought there was nothing. At 1:50 a.m., I pulled into a small fuel place that stayed open late. It wasn't a big travel center with showers and chains and cameras everywhere. It was bright lights, a couple of pumps, a glass door that didn't look thick enough to keep anyone safe, and a counter with a tired clerk behind it. The air smelled like hot coffee and floor cleaner, and the fluorescent lights made everyone look a little sick. A white sedan was parked near the front with the driver door open. A woman was inside by the coffee, moving like she'd done it 1,000 times. She looked up when I came in, polite, tired, not scared. If she'd been scared, I would have remembered that too. "Long night?" she asked. "Same as yours," I said, because that's what you say when you don't want a conversation, but you don't want to be rude. I paid, grabbed a bottle of water, and stepped back out into the wind. She walked out right after me, got in the sedan, and pulled onto the highway ahead of my truck. I remember it because she didn't hesitate. No checking her phone, no standing around with keys in hand. Just steady, certain movement, like she'd already decided the road was safe. 10 minutes later, I saw her car again, and it wasn't moving. The first thing my headlights caught was the portable sign. It was clean, reflective, and set at a slight angle to face incoming traffic, the way someone would do if they cared about compliance. It read like an official message: commercial vehicles, inspection ahead, exit now. The letters were crisp. The reflective surface threw my lights back at me in a hard, white glare that made my eyes narrow. Then I saw the cones. Not a long taper like you'd expect with a real operation, just enough cones to force you to slow and funnel you into the turnout before you had time to think. The turnout itself was a gravel pocket off the shoulder, big enough for 2 or 3 rigs if they parked tight. The white sedan was already there, angled crooked, driver door still open like the person inside had stepped out fast. A man stood at the edge of the lane in a reflective vest. He waved a flashlight low, not in my eyes, like he knew how to do it without provoking a trucker. He didn't wave frantically. He didn't jump around. He just held the light and made a slow, certain motion with his hand. I didn't like anything about it. There was no marked patrol unit, no overhead lights, no second person visible, no portable generator, no additional signage warning of reduced speed or a checkpoint. It was just the sign, the man, and that turnout, and I felt something in my body start to tighten the way a seatbelt tightens in a sudden stop. I eased off the throttle and rolled down my window about an inch. I didn't want my whole cab open to whatever was out there, but I needed to hear him. He stepped closer, careful, like he expected me to follow instructions. "Pull into the turnout," he said. "What agency?" I asked. "State," he said. And he said it like that was the end of the discussion. I asked for a badge number. I asked where the marked unit was. I asked where the inspection station was set up. My left foot hovered over the clutch and my right foot stayed light on the brake, because you can't be indecisive in a rig. Indecision is how you stall, and stalling is how you get boxed in. He didn't answer any of it. He lifted his flashlight and pointed at the electronic logging tablet on my dash like he could see it through the windshield. "Shut it down and bring your paperwork," he said. That's when I saw the other rig more clearly. It sat deeper in the turnout, half swallowed by darkness, cab doors open. The trailer seal was cut clean and hanging. It looked abandoned in a way trucks don't look abandoned unless something is wrong. A truck is a workplace. A truck is someone's livelihood. People don't leave them open like that unless they've been pulled away. I glanced at my phone. No bars, not even one. It wasn't unusual out there, but it mattered now, in a way it hadn't mattered 10 minutes earlier. The man kept pointing, patient, confident, like he could wait all night. Then a pickup rolled up behind me with no headlights, just a dark shape that filled the space. It stopped close enough that I couldn't back up without hitting it. I couldn't see the driver, but I could feel the intent in the way it parked. Close, controlling, deliberate. The man's mouth changed shape, just a slight smile. It wasn't friendly. It was a confirmation. "Now," he said, "pull in." I didn't. I put the truck in gear and started easing forward, not into the turnout, but along the shoulder, trying to slip past the first cone. It was a tight move and a stupid move if this was real, but my instincts had stopped negotiating. My brain had already labeled the scene as a trap, and when your brain does that, you either listen or you pay. The man's voice changed. He dropped the calm. "Stop the truck," he said. I ignored him and committed. If I stopped, I gave him my cab. If I stayed moving, I kept the only advantage I had, which was mass and momentum. He darted toward my door. Something struck the passenger side mirror hard enough to jerk it. The glass cracked. I heard a sharp sound like metal on plastic. My shoulders went hot and tight, and the part of me that still wanted this to be nothing started to peel away. The pickup behind me surged. Its grille filled my mirror for a second, and then it swung out like it was going to come around my left side. That told me everything I needed to know. Real inspectors don't chase you in an unmarked pickup with the lights off. I pushed the throttle down and let the truck build speed. The trailer tugged like it didn't want to come with me, then fell in line as the whole rig straightened out. The pickup tried to pace me. I saw the driver's head turn toward my cab, like he wanted eye contact, like he wanted me to register him as a person. I didn't give it to him. I kept my eyes forward and held the wheel steady. My mind ran through options and rejected most of them. No cell service meant no 911. The next town meant lights and people, but it also meant intersections where someone could box me in. Pulling over meant surrender. Stopping meant the same. I chose the simplest plan I could live with. Keep moving until I found people, cameras, and official light. At about 2:12 a.m., the pickup fell back. Either the driver didn't want to follow me into Boise City, or he knew something I didn't. I didn't relax. I drove like a man who expected the headlights behind him to come back any second. My hands stayed tight on the wheel, and I kept checking my mirrors until my eyes felt dry. At 2:20 a.m., I hit the edge of Boise City and followed the signs to a travel center on the north side. It had a wide lot, bright poles, and enough parked rigs that you couldn't watch every angle at once. That should have made me feel safer, but what it really did was remind me how easy it is to disappear even in a crowd if someone wants you to. I pulled near the front, right under a light pole, and set the brakes. My hands shook when I reached for the latch. I kept the door locked and sat there for a full minute, just listening to the engine tick and watching the lot for movement near my trailer. Nothing moved. I finally climbed down and walked the length of my rig to check the seal. It was still intact. The metal band was clean and untouched. When I reached the rear doors, I saw a fresh scrape on the bumper, like something had brushed it. I didn't know if it happened tonight or earlier. I didn't care. My stomach stayed tight anyway. A driver in a faded cap stood near the fuel island watching me. He had that look long-haul drivers get when they've seen enough to stop being surprised. "You all right?" he asked. "I need a phone that works," I said. He nodded toward the building. "Inside." I walked in and went straight to the counter. The clerk looked up from a screen and saw my face, and his expression changed in a way that told me I looked as shaken as I felt. "Sir," he said. "Call the sheriff," I told him. "Now." He hesitated, like he wanted a reason he could put into a neat line. "A fake inspection stop west of town," I said. "A man tried to force me into a turnout. Another truck was sitting there open. A white sedan was there too." That did it. The clerk picked up the phone and started talking fast, eyes on me like he expected me to vanish if he looked away. While he talked, I noticed a corkboard near the entrance. Flyers, photos, names, phone numbers, missing. 2 men and a woman, dates all within the last month. It wasn't some old community board that never gets updated. It was fresh, like people had been standing there recently with tape and hope. A man stepped up beside me and stared at the board too long for it to be casual. "That's my buddy," he said quietly, pointing at one of the men. He turned to me. "I'm Luis. You saw something?" "I saw a rig sitting open," I said. "I didn't get close enough to read the door." Luis's jaw tightened. He didn't yell. He didn't make a scene. He took a slow breath like he was trying to keep his hands from shaking. A patrol vehicle rolled in at 2:38 a.m. A deputy came in alone. Tan uniform, calm posture, not rushed, not panicked, but alert in the way people get when they've been to enough bad scenes that they don't waste motion. Her name tag read Keen. She listened without interrupting while I described the sign, the cones, the pickup, and the other rig. I told her about the man in the reflective vest and how he'd refused to identify an agency. I told her about the mirror strike and the pickup trying to pass me like it was a chase. When I mentioned the white sedan, her eyes narrowed. "White sedan with the door open?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "I saw the driver at the last fuel place. Then her car was there." Deputy Keen looked at the clerk. "Any calls about a missing woman tonight?" The clerk shook his head. Keen looked back at me. "Show me." Luis stepped forward. "I'm coming," he said, voice tight. Keen didn't argue. She pointed at him. "You stay behind me, both of you." We left at 2:50 a.m. Keen followed in her unit. I drove my truck because I wasn't leaving it in the lot after what I'd seen, and because I didn't trust the idea that the trap ended just because I'd reached lights. That should tell you how my mind was working then. I still thought in terms of equipment and cargo, like control was something you could keep by holding onto your keys. We reached the spot around 3:12 a.m. The cones were gone. The sign was gone. The turnout looked like every other gravel pocket on the side of a long highway. If you drove by in daylight, you'd never notice it, and that was the point. It wasn't a place, it was a tool. But the tracks were still there. Tire marks cut in hard like someone had spun. A dark streak ran toward the ditch like fluid had spilled and been dragged. Deputy Keene swept her light across the gravel slowly, reading it the way a driver reads fresh snow on a lot. The white sedan sat farther back than I expected, half hidden from the road. The driver door was still open. The interior light glowed weakly, like the battery was trying its best. Keene approached with her hand near her holster. "Ma'am?" she called. No answer. Luis stood behind her, breathing hard through his nose like he was trying to control something inside him. I stayed near my cab, scanning the road and the fields beyond. Not because I wanted to, because my body wouldn't let me stop. Keene leaned into the sedan and looked at the seats and floor. She straightened. "Purse is here," she said. "Keys are here." She looked at me. "When did you see her last?" "About 10 minutes before the sign," I said. Keene lifted her shoulder mic and tried to raise the office. Her voice stayed calm and flat, the way professionals talk when they need words to function. Static answered. No clean connection. She tried again, stepping into the open lane, holding the radio higher like altitude could fix it. The wind caught her words and tore them away. A vehicle approached from the west. 2 headlights showed for a moment on the horizon. Then they went dark. Keene froze. Luis whispered, "That's them," like he knew it in his bones. I didn't wait for confirmation. I ran back to my cab and climbed in, hands shaking so hard I missed the handle the first time. Keene moved fast too, retreating toward her unit, putting distance between herself and the turnout center. The pickup rolled into view with its lights off, a dark mass sliding forward. It stopped at an angle that blocked the easiest path back onto the highway, like it had done this move before. A man stepped out. He didn't speak at first. He just looked at us like he'd returned to a job site and found tools moved. Keene snapped her flashlight on him. "Sheriff's office," she said. "Hands where I can see them." The man laughed once, short and sharp, like the idea was funny. "That's not your county car," he said, nodding toward my truck. "You brought help." Keene didn't answer. She kept her stance. A second man moved into view from the passenger side. He held something low near his leg. I couldn't see details from where I was, but I didn't need to. The way Keene's shoulders tightened told me enough. "Back away," Keene said, voice steady. The first man stepped closer instead. "Get in your car," he said to her. "Drive away. Leave the truck." He pointed toward my trailer like it offended him. "That load isn't yours," he said. "It's just riding behind you." Luis took a half step forward without thinking. "You took my buddy," he said, voice breaking around the words. The first man looked at Luis like he was an inconvenience. "I don't know your buddy," he said, and he sounded bored. Everything after that happened fast, but it didn't feel loud in my memory. It felt distant, like my brain put a pane of glass between me and reality so I could keep functioning. Keene fired once. The crack snapped across the empty road. The second man jerked back and stumbled. The first man moved behind the pickup's door, and something flashed in his hands. I heard another sharp crack and saw a spark near Keene's unit. I heard glass pop somewhere, and then my instincts took over. I dropped the truck into gear and eased forward. Not full throttle, not a dramatic ramming speed, just enough to put my bumper against the pickup's rear corner and shove. I needed a lane. I needed open road. I needed to break the geometry of their trap. The pickup jolted when I made contact, and the man behind the door shouted something I couldn't make out. Luis was still outside. He was too close to the open lane, exposed under my headlights. Keene yelled, "Get down!" and her voice was the first thing that sounded genuinely afraid. Luis turned toward her. He took one step, then he went down hard. From my seat, it looked like he'd tripped. It looked like his legs had vanished. He hit the gravel and didn't move, and the world in my cab turned cold in an instant. Not fear as an idea, fear as a physical wave that makes your fingers numb. Keene sprinted to him anyway. She dragged him by the collar toward the sedan and got him behind it. She checked him fast. her light moving over him in quick, controlled motions. Then she looked up at my cab. "Drive!" she shouted. "Drive now!" I hit the throttle harder than I should have. The pickup still blocked part of the lane, but my shove had opened enough space to slip by on the shoulder. The trailer tires bounced over rough gravel, and the whole rig shuddered like it wanted to come apart. I heard sharp impacts on metal and glass, and I refused to look down. Keen got into her unit and pulled out behind me, lights off at first, then on once we hit the highway. Red and blue strobes filled my mirrors and turned the road into a flashing tunnel. The pickup followed. Its headlights came on in a sudden burst, close and aggressive, like it wanted to press Keen off the road. Keen got on her loudspeaker. "Stop the vehicle," she ordered. The pickup didn't stop. It accelerated. She stayed between it and my trailer as long as she could, but I knew she was alone and out of range of help. I knew the radio had been static. I knew we were on open highway with no shoulder wide enough to be safe. I made a decision that still sits wrong in my chest when I say it out loud. I slowed down a little, not enough to stop, just enough to make the pickup commit to a pass. The pickup surged, trying to go around Keen on the right shoulder. That put it alongside my trailer, and I saw the driver's face for a split second in the flash of Keen's lights. He wasn't panicked. He looked intent, like this was just another step in a process. I steered left, then right. Not a wild swerve. A controlled shift that guided the trailer's rear into the space the pickup wanted. It's a move drivers know in their bones, and it's also a move that can get people hurt, which is why most of us never do it. The pickup's driver corrected too late. The right side tires dropped off the shoulder, gravel sprayed. The truck fishtailed once, then slid into the ditch and rolled onto its side with a heavy final thud that I felt through my steering column even from ahead. Keen braked hard and stopped at an angle that protected her. She got out with her weapon up, breathing fast but controlled, and she shouted commands I couldn't make out. I stopped farther ahead and walked back on legs that didn't feel like mine. The driver crawled out through a broken window, dazed but moving. Keen ordered him down, and he went down. A second man crawled out after him and tried to run on unsteady legs. Keen fired once into the ground near his feet, a warning that made him stop and drop. She cuffed them with hands that didn't shake. She kept talking into her radio, trying for a signal, voice tight with effort. At 3:50 a.m., her words finally caught a clean line, and I heard her say something like, "Shots fired, 1 civilian down, need medical." And the reality of what had happened settled in my gut like a stone. Backup arrived slower than movies make it look, because the Panhandle is big and people are far apart. Units came from 2 directions, and the lights spread across the road like a moving town. An ambulance came. Luis was transported. Keen stayed on scene and gave quick statements while still watching the ditch and the turnout like she expected a third vehicle to appear from the dark. By 6:10 a.m., the sheriff and 2 state investigators were standing in that turnout with the white sedan, the tire marks, and the scattered evidence that the wind kept trying to move. They treated it like a crime scene, not like a story told by a tired driver. That mattered because when law enforcement treats something like a story, it drifts away. When they treat it like a scene, it becomes real in a way paperwork can hold. They searched the pickup. They found zip ties, a stack of blank shipping labels, and a binder sealed in a plastic bag like someone cared about keeping it dry. Inside the binder was a list of trucks, company names, trailer numbers, routes, notes in plain printed font, and my name, Heath. Next to it was the cargo description from my paperwork, copied word for word, including my delivery window. That detail felt worse than the gunfire. It meant they hadn't just picked a truck at random. It meant my night had been selected. I hadn't said any of that out loud on the highway. I hadn't told anyone my load contents at the fuel stop. I hadn't posted it online. Yet there it was, in a stranger's binder, like my life was a line item. The investigators found the staging site before noon. It was an old maintenance yard off a county road, hidden behind fencing and a line of junk equipment. The portable sign was there, folded down like it had never been used. Cones were stacked neatly beside it. There were tools that made sense for the work. Bolt cutters, reflective vests, flashlights, radios, everything arranged like a kit. Inside a small shed, they found wallets and phones that belonged to missing drivers, collected and stored like souvenirs. They found Luis's buddy alive, taped to a chair, dehydrated and shaking, but breathing and able to talk once water hit his mouth. They found the woman from the white sedan alive too, wrists bruised, eyes wide, sitting very still like she didn't trust daylight. Nobody made her talk until medical checked her, and that was another thing that made it feel real. Real situations move at the speed of policy and triage, not at the speed of drama. They found 2 other men in a refrigerated container behind the shed. The investigators didn't make a show of it. They didn't talk loudly. Their faces told the story. Some outcomes don't need description to land. By late afternoon, I was sitting in the sheriff's office giving a statement that felt too clean for what the night had been. A statement is just words and times and directions, and there aren't enough boxes on a form for the part where your instincts scream at you or the part where you realize your mirrors can't show you what's in the dark. Deputy Keene came in once, face pale, uniform stained at the knee where she'd dragged Luis. She didn't cry. She didn't perform. She looked at me like a person who had done her job and was still processing the cost. "You did what you had to do," she said. I wanted to tell her I didn't feel like someone who handled anything well. I didn't feel brave. I felt like a man pushed down a hallway with one door at the end, and I'd taken it because the other options were worse. Luis survived, which I didn't find out until later. He spent time in the hospital, and he was out of work for a while, but he lived. That fact is one of the only reasons I can tell this story without my throat closing up. A week later, an investigator called me and explained how my name ended up in that binder. One of the men in custody had worked in freight scheduling years earlier. He still had access to accounts he shouldn't have had, and he'd been selling load details, routes, times, cargo descriptions to anyone who paid. The inspection wasn't about inspecting anything. It was about identifying the right trailer, isolating it, and taking control of the driver. That was the part that stayed with me. Not the cones, not the sign, not even the chase. The idea that my whole night, my route, my load, my name, could end up in a stranger's binder because someone decided to trade information for cash. I finished that run after they inspected my trailer and replaced the seal. I drove past that stretch again in daylight, and it looked harmless. Open road, gravel shoulders, fence lines, and a turnout that could have been any turnout. The sky was bright, the world was normal, and that's what made it worse, because it proved how easy it is for something awful to hide inside something ordinary. I didn't stop, I never will.